Students, now that we have understood the idea of chain rule, let us understand one more concept which is very similar to that. So, if let us say there is a function y is equal to f of x which is given to us, right, and see if they ask us to find the value of dy by dx, which means if they ask us to differentiate y with respect to x, we can easily do that. We know different methods for differentiating the given function, right. Okay. Instead of asking us to differentiate with respect to x, if they ask us to differentiate with respect to t, let us any other function, any other variable, it need not be t, any other variable. So, in this case I am representing it as t, right. Okay. So, if they ask us dy by dt, so what do we do? So, here there are two things that we should be aware of. There are two possibilities that can happen. One is that x which we have taken here, it depends on t, clear. The second thing is that the value of x is independent of t, right. Okay. So, now when they ask you something like this, you should first think about which of these cases is going to happen. So, for example, I will take an example to explain this. Let us say y here is the area of square, right, okay, is equal to, we know that area of square is nothing but length of square whole square. So, this is the function y is equal to f of x, clear. Okay. So, which means area is a function of L, right, understood. Okay. Now, if I ask you what is dA by dL, you will quickly tell me that the answer is 2L. We have been doing this normal differentiation, right, differentiating L square with respect to L gives me 2L. But in the same question, if I ask you what is dA by dt, so now this is where you should be very careful. Why? Because I told you that A is dependent on L, A value depends on the value of L, correct. But I am asking you, how does area change with time? You understand? A depends on length, find areas change with time. So, to answer this, you have to first know whether length depends on time or not. So, if length is independent of time, like I have given in this case, if x is independent of t, which means even if you change t, if x is not changing, it means that y also will not change. In such a case, you can directly say dA by dt is 0. Do you understand that? See, I will repeat what I told you here. So, what I said was, if x is independent of t, means if t is changing, x does not care. Even if t changes, x is the same x, it is not changing with t. It will automatically mean that because y depends on x does not depend on t, it means that y does not depend on t. So, in such a scenario, when y has no relation with t, in such a case, what is the value of dA by dt? 0. Why? Even if you change time, A will not change. So, dA by dt will be 0. So, the problem comes in such scenario, in this case, clear. So, in that case, x depends on t, which means by changing t, x will change, and y depends on x, right, which means by changing t, I am changing x, which in turn changes y. So, that is the scenario. So, in this case, if I explain with this example, I have area of the square, I have length of the square. If I consider that the length of the square is constant, it is not changing with time, clear. In such a case, can I say that because length is constant with time, area is also constant with time, right. So, that is what I mean. So, in such a scenario, I can say dA by dt is 0, right. What if L is not constant with time? What if L changes with time? So, what do I do in such a case? In such a case, we will be using a method like this. So, to find dA by dt, see I know dA by dl, correct. In this scenario, by using this relation, I can find dA by dl without any doubt. But if they ask us dA by dt, so I will just use the chain rule which we understood earlier. So, how do we create a chain here? dA by dt can be written as, I will write that dt over here, because I can find dA by dl, I will put dl here and dl here, that is it. So, what do I get? I get dA by dt is equal to dA by dl, okay, dA by dl value we know that, right, which is 2l. So, 2l into dl by dt. Clear, students? So, observe carefully what I have done here. See, I have a is equal to L square as my function, right. If I am differentiating this with L, I get 2L. If I am differentiating this with T, what am I getting? 2L into dl by dt, which means when they are asking you to differentiate something with respect to a variable, some random variable, what you should do is first differentiate it with respect to L, right, what we have done here, then differentiate that variable with respect to T. So, that is the chain which we have created here. Do you understand that? For example, let us say I have given you a case like this. So, let us consider that volume of cone, or let us say volume of sphere, is equal to 4 by 3 pi r cube. So, let us say I gave you this relation. So, which means V is equal to 4 by 3 pi r cube. Clear? I gave you this relation. We know that V depends on r. So, if I ask you what is dV by dr, you can easily calculate, right. You will directly differentiate this expression. 4 by 3 pi will be separate. You will differentiate r cube with respect to r and you will give me the answer. Okay, first let us write that dV by dr. What is the value? First, this is a constant. So, 4 by 3 pi into, right, what is the derivative of r cube with respect to r? It is normal 3r square, right, this we can do. But in the same question, by giving you the same relation, V is equal to 4 by 3 pi r cube, if I ask you what is dV by dt, let us say I am asking you to differentiate volume with respect to time, what will you do? The idea is pretty simple. First, differentiate this with respect to r itself, then differentiate r with respect to t and multiply them. That is what we have done here. Clear? I know A with L. So, I differentiated this with respect to L and I differentiated L with respect to T and multiplied that. When I multiply, because of the chain created here, we will actually get the value we wanted. So, that is what we will do here. So, can you tell me what should be the answer here? dV by dt is nothing but dV by dr. So, just differentiate this with respect to r first, which will give me 4 by 3 pi into 3r square. Now, differentiate r with respect to t, dr by dt. So, that is the relation. Clear, students? So, this is just a continuation of what we learnt, a similar concept for what we learnt in chain rule, right. But like I told you in the earlier case, if x is independent of t, it will automatically mean that y is also independent of t, and in such a scenario you can directly say that dA by dt is 0. So, what that basically means is this y cannot be changed by time. So, if time cannot change y, this has no meaning, right. What does this mean? How does A change with time? So, with time it does not change. So, that is how we should understand. Clear? Now, we will discuss about a concept called rate measure. So, let us see what it is. So, rate measure. So, basically here we will be learning about the relation between the rate of change of one quantity with the rate of change of another quantity. So, for example, let us say there are two different quantities which are related to each other. So, let us just take an example. Let us say we have a sphere, and if r is the radius of the sphere, right, then we can say that the volume of the sphere can be written as 4 by 3 pi r cube. So, you know this relation, right. So, now in this particular scenario, for example, if let us say they have given us the value of dr by dt. So, dr by dt means what? It represents the rate of change of radius. So, rate of change of radius. So, let us say for some reason the radius of that object is increasing or decreasing. So, let us say its size is changing. So, it could be a balloon and you are blowing air into that balloon and the size of that is increasing, clear. So, in such a case we can say that r increases. So, if I know at what rate r is increasing, right, I can find out at what rate v is increasing also. So, that relation between rate of change of v and rate of change of r, so that calculation is what we call as rate measure. So, that is the kind of cases which we will be dealing with in this particular topic. So, we will take the same example, right. So, let us consider that at a moment a balloon is spherical and has a radius of 10 centimeters, let us say radius of 10 centimeters, clear. So, now we are let us consider that we are blowing air into that balloon. So, in such a scenario the volume of that balloon increases, and because the volume increases its radius also increases. So, we can understand it like that, right. So, let us consider that if air is blown into it, at a rate of, let us take some value, let us say some 10 centimeter cube per second, right. So, 10 centimeter cube per second. So, by looking at this unit you have to understand that centimeter cube per second. So, what does that mean? Volume per second. So, what I have given you here is basically dV by dt. So, I have given you how much is the rate at which volume of that balloon is increasing with time, clear, change in volume with respect to time. So, that would be the units centimeter per second. So, this is the expression that is given to us, right. Find the rate at which its radius is changing, Okay. So, that is the idea. So, I guess you understood the scenario here. So, we have a balloon of some radius, it is given as 10 centimeters, and we started blowing air into the balloon, and we are blowing air at a rate of 10 centimeter cube per second. So, per every second 10 centimeter cube of air is going to enter into that balloon. So, that is the rate, that is the instantaneous rate at which the balloon's volume is increasing. So, they have given us the value of dV by dt and they are asking us to find the value of dr by dt, find the rate at which radius is changing, right. Because V is changing here, R is also going to change, clear. We know the relation between V and R. What do we have to find now? We have to find out the relation between dV by dt and dr by dt. Do you understand this? So, we already know the relation. We know how volume and radius of that sphere are related with each other. Now, here because volume is increasing, R should also increase. So, we know this rate, we need to calculate this rate, clear. So, how do we do? How do I bring dV by dt and dr by dt from this expression? You know that I can differentiate this expression with respect to time, right. So, when I differentiate this expression with respect to time, I have this expression V is equal to 4 by 3 pi r cube, correct, right. Now, so if I differentiate this with respect to time, I would be getting dv by dt is equal to 4 by 3 times pi is a constant. So now I need to differentiate r cube. But remember, I am not differentiating r cube with respect to r. If I differentiate it with respect to r, I would be getting 3r square, correct? But I am differentiating it with respect to time. So how do we do that? We have discussed this already. So if I need to differentiate this with respect to time, first differentiate it with respect to r and then differentiate r with respect to time, correct? So which means I will first differentiate this with respect to r, which will give me 3r square, and then I will differentiate r with respect to time. So dr by dt, clear, right? So please observe carefully once again. So when I differentiate v with respect to time, I get dv by dt, the rate of change in volume is equal to 4 by 3 pi, which is a constant, into rate of change of r cube. So whenever we are dealing with such cases, if I have to differentiate r cube with respect to time, first differentiate it with respect to r and then differentiate r with respect to time, clear? So that is the expression which we would be getting. So now you can see here, I have a relation between dv by dt and dr by dt. So this is given to us and this is what we should calculate, clear? So rest is just substitution. So let us substitute the values given to us. So dv by dt is given as 10 centimeter cube per second. So 10 centimeter cube per second is equal to 3 and 3 is getting cancelled. So I get 4 pi into r square. R square is 10 centimeter whole square into dr by dt, right? So that's it. So you can send this to this side and you can find the value of dr by dt. So what do we get? Dr by dt is equal to, so 10 and 10, 110 here will get cancelled. So you will be getting 1 by 400 pi, sorry 1 by 40 pi, right? So 1 by 40 pi centimeter per second. So it basically means that for every second the radius of the balloon, or we can say that this is the instantaneous rate at which the balloon's radius is increasing. So 1 by 40 pi centimeter per second. So that is the idea. So throughout this topic of rate measure, that is what we will be doing. So we would know the rate of change in one quantity, and using that we will be finding out the rate of change in another quantity, clear? So we will see few more examples. So students, we will see a few more questions now on rate measure. So here they have given that a rectangle has the dimensions length into breadth given by 10 centimeters by 5 centimeters. If its length is increasing at a rate of 3 millimeter per second and its breadth is decreasing at a rate of 1 millimeter per second, find the rate of change of its area, clear? So first of all, we have length which is changing, we have breadth which is changing, and we need to find the change in or rate of change in area. So first, if I have to find the relation between their rates, I need to find the relation between the quantities itself, right? So I have area, length and breadth. So what is the relation between these three quantities? So remember, whenever you need to write a relation between the rate of change, first write the relation between the quantities, clear, whatever quantities are involved in that particular case. So write the relation between the quantities and then you can differentiate that expression to find the relation between their rates. So all the questions which we are going to do will have the same method. First the relation between the quantities, differentiate, and then relation between the rates. So 3-step process, clear? Everything will have the same method. We will see. So you know the relation between area, length and breadth for a rectangle. Area is equal to length into breadth, or I will just write it as variables. A is equal to L into B. So remember, L is changing, B is changing, and A, because of change in L and B, A is also changing, clear? So we need to now find out the rate of change of area. So what I will do is I will differentiate it with respect to time, clear? So when I differentiate with respect to time, I would get dA by dt is equal to here. You know that this is a UV rule, I can apply UV rule here. And how do we apply UV rule? First function into derivative of second function, which is dB by dt, plus second function into derivative of first one, so which is dL by dt. So that's it, we got the relation between the rate of change in area with rate of change in length and breadth and rate of change in length. So that is it. So rest is just substitution, which we can easily complete. So let us quickly do that. So length is basically 10 centimeters into breadth, rate of change of breadth, right. So rate of change of breadth is 1 millimeter per second, but please keep in mind, so if you look at the question properly, they have given that its breadth is decreasing at a rate of 1 millimeter per second. So when breadth is decreasing, so we know that whenever we have something which is decreasing, its rate or the first order derivative will be negative, correct. So what we should substitute here in place of dB by dt, because the function is decreasing, because the breadth is decreasing, its slope, its rate should be negative. So I should be taking the value here as minus 1 millimeter per second, clear, plus breadth. Breadth we know that it is 5 centimeters into dL by dt. What is the value of dL by dt they have given us? So they are saying that its length is increasing at a rate of 3 millimeter per second, clear. So increasing, so it would be positive itself, and the value of that is 3 millimeter per second. So 3 millimeter per second. So when I simplify this, so I can write this as 0.1 centimeter per second, correct. This can be written as 0.1 and this can be written as 0.3. So 0.1 into 10 will be 1. So this becomes minus 1 centimeter square per second, and here this is 0.3. 0.3 into 5 is 1.5. Once again centimeter square per second. So plus 1.5 centimeter square per second. So which means the final answer which we get is half centimeter square per second. So that is the answer. So please observe carefully what we have done. So there is, as I told you, it is a 3-step process, right. First write the relation. So this is the first step. So first step. Second is differentiate that relation. So this would be the second step, and third would be the relation between the rates. Once we differentiate it, rest is just substitution. So you can look at it as third step, or 2 steps is enough. So once we differentiate it, we already get the relation between the quantities which they are asking us. So that is it, students. So that is the method which we will be following in any case where they are asking you to find the rate of change, clear. We will see one more example. So here they are saying that there is an ice cube, it has a length of 10 centimeters, it is melting at a rate of 10 centimeter cube per second. Find the rate of change of its length and surface area, clear. So what they have considered here is there is a cube. So let us say this is a cube, its side length is, let us represent it as A. So side length of the cube is A, and the length of that is also given to us. A is given as 10 centimeter per second, sorry, A is given as 10 centimeters, that is the side length. But what is happening, they have given that the ice cube is melting, clear. So if it is melting, it melts from all the sides, right. So from all the sides it is melting and it is becoming smaller and smaller cube, clear. So that is what we have to consider. Now they have given us at what rate it is melting, right. So what does that mean? You can look at the units that is given to us and you can understand what they mean. What are the units there? Centimeter cube per second, which means volume per time. So what is that rate? It is the volume rate, clear. So they have given us the volume rate. So which means if the volume of this is some V, so they have given us at what rate, how fast its volume is changing. Do you understand that? Rate means the pace at which something is changing, correct. So, the volume of this cube is changing at a rate of 10 centimeter cube per second, but keep in mind it is melting. So, melting means what happens to its volume, cube's volume, will it increase or decrease? It decreases, right, because the water, after melting, the water just goes away, only the remaining solid will be left. So, we should consider that dV by dt in this case is negative. So, negative 10 centimeter cube per second. So, these are the information which you will have to look for, clear. So, melting means that volume is decreasing. So, sometimes they will be giving you that the length is increasing or length is decreasing. So, based on increasing or decreasing, you will have to take the signs properly. So, looking after those signs is also very important, clear. Okay. So, we know the volume rate here. They are asking us to find out the rate at which its length changes. So, I have a relation, I know the volume rate, I need to find the rate at which length changes, right. So, which means if I have to find the relation between dV by dt and dA by dt, what is the first step? I need to first know the relation between them, then I can find the relation between their rate of changes, correct. Now, what is the relation between volume of cube and side length of the cube? This is something which you all know. Volume of a cube is nothing but a cube, right. So, volume of a cube is nothing but a cube. So, I know the volume, I know the relation now. So, the first step is over. So, this is the first step, I have completed that. Next is just differentiating it. So, I will differentiate it with respect to time. So, when I differentiate it, I will be getting dV by dt is equal to, you know how to differentiate with respect to time. First differentiate with respect to a and then differentiate a with respect to t, correct students. So, that is it. So, now I know the relation between rate of change of volume and rate of change of side length. So, side length decreases, right, we know that. So, if you need to find that, you can directly use this relation. So, let us see what we get here. Let us substitute the values. We substitute dV by dt as minus 10 centimeter cube per second is equal to 3 into a square. A square is 10 centimeter whole square, which gives us 100 centimeter square into dA by dt. So, what do we get by simplifying this? 10 and 1 0 here gets cancelled, and I will finally get dA by dt is equal to, how much is that? Minus, we have 30 here, when it comes this side I will get minus 1 by 30 centimeter. Here we have centimeter square, here we have centimeter cube. So, we will be left with centimeter, right, centimeter per second. So, that is the answer, right. So, that is the rate at which its side length is changing. And what does negative sign here represent? It represents that the side length of the cube is decreasing, clear. So, each and everywhere that sign will also tell you some information. So, positive sign means increasing, negative sign means decreasing, clear. So, that is the idea, students. Okay. The question is not over, right. So, we have only done the first part. So, this is for first part. Now, we have the second part as well, in which we need to find the rate of change of surface area. So, I know dA by dt already, I need to find the rate of change of surface area. So, let us represent it with S. So, what is the relation? First we will have to write the relation, then differentiate it, correct. So, what is the surface area of a cube? So, that would be 6a square. I hope you know that, you would have studied this, because every cube has 6 faces, right, 6 square faces. So, 1, 2, 3, 4, and front there will be one face and back side there will be another face. So, it will have 6 square surfaces, and each square, because the side length is a and this length will be a. So, you know that the area of this square will be a square, and there are 6 such faces. So, we get 6a square, clear. Okay. So now I know the relation between surface area of the cube and the side length of the cube. Now what is the next method, next step which we will have to do? I need to find ds by dt, right? Rate of change of surface area. So let us differentiate it. I would get ds by dt is equal to, yes, 6 into derivative of a square. What is the derivative of a square? 2a. But remember, I am not differentiating it with respect to time, sorry, with respect to a. I have to differentiate it with respect to time. So into dA by dt. Clear, students? And you can substitute this dA by dt which we derived into this expression, and you will directly get the value of ds by dt. So solving that will give me ds by dt is equal to, how much is this? 6 into 2 into a is 10. So 6 into 20 into 1 by 30. So you have 6 into 20 into, this is minus 1 by 30. So finally 0 and 0 gets cancelled, 3 1s and 3 2s, right? So 2 and 2 will be there. So I will be finally left with 4 centimeters square per second, a negative sign. And once again the negative sign represents that the surface area of the cube is decreasing. Clear, students? So that is the idea. So remember, there are very simple steps here. Write the relation, differentiate the expression, find the relation between the rate of change. Clear? So students, let us see a few more questions. So here we are asking us to find the rate at which the length of the shadow of man changes if he is walking at a speed of 3 meter per second. So this man is walking, let us say, in this direction away from the lamp post. So this is the lamp post, and from here he is walking away at a speed of 3 meter per second. Clear? And as a result of that, we need to find out what is the rate at which the length of his shadow is changing. See, this is something which you would have observed also, right? When you are walking on a road in the evening times, when there is some lamp behind you, when there is a street light behind you, and as you walk past it, so initially you will see that your shadow is smaller, and the farther you go, your shadow becomes longer and longer, right? You would have observed that. So we need to find out at what rate is the length of that shadow changing. Clear? So first let us understand how and where the shadow is formed. So you know that the light ray which is coming from the lamp post will directly reach this part of the road or that ground. It will reach here as well, it will reach different parts of the ground here. But can I say that it won't be able to reach few parts which are over here, and the reason for that is because the man blocks that light, and that is what we call as shadow, right? See, for example, if light is coming in this direction, if I place my hand in the path of light, so what happens is that there would be a region behind on the board where some light rays won't be able to reach, and whichever region where the light rays are not reaching is what we call as shadow, correct? Okay. So to understand how the shadow is formed here, what I will do is I will draw a light ray which is just passing through the head of the man. Clear? So can I say that the light ray will reach this position and light ray will reach all the positions after that, but light rays cannot reach this particular length. Do you all agree with that? So this is the length where the light ray will not be able to reach directly. Man is blocking those light rays, correct? So this is the length of the shadow, and we need to find out at what rate is this length changing. Clear, students? Okay. So first of all, in this case we have no variables given to us. So let us start with assuming some variables. Clear? So they have given us this length is 6. I'll assume that the length of the shadow is some L, and the man is at a distance of some x from the lamp post. Clear? So I have taken this length as L from here till here, length of the shadow as this length as x, length of the shadow as L. These are the variables I have taken. Now can I say that as the man walks, as the man moves, x changes and even L changes. So we need to find out what rate L changes. Clear? Okay. So we know that in all the cases of rate measure, the first step is to establish a relation between the variables, between the quantities involved, right. So here the variables are x and L, right. So I need to establish a relation between x and L. So how do we establish what is the relation between x and L? Okay, the height of the man is not given here, it should be given. So height of man is, let us say, some 2 meters, clear. So 2 meters is the height of man. So we need to establish a relation between x and L first. Okay. So I guess by now you must have had an idea of what relation x and L would have, because I can use the concept of similar triangles, right. You can see two similar triangles being formed here, this big triangle which I am drawing here separately. So this is, let us say, the bigger triangle, and this is the man's height. So in this way we can see two triangles which are similar to each other being formed. This length is 6, this length is 2, this length is x from here to here, and this length is y. Correct, students? Okay. So now I need to find the relation between x and y. You know how to relate them, right? So what is the relation? This height of the bigger triangle divided by this height of the smaller triangle should be equal to this length of the bigger triangle by this length of the smaller triangle. Height by height is equal to base length by base length. That is what I am using here. So height by height. So if I use that, I get 6 by 2 is equal to base length of the bigger triangle is x plus y divided by base length of the smaller triangle is y. Clear? So that is the expression which we would be getting. Okay. So I got the relation between x and y. Now what they are asking us to, okay, I have taken it as L, right. So let us take it as L itself. So let us represent it as L. Okay. So in this particular case, we need to find out the rate at which the length of the shadow is changing. So can you say that rate of change of this length can be represented as dl by dt. So I need to calculate dl by dt. So dl by dt is what we have to find out. Okay. What is the information that they have given us? They have given us that the man is walking at a speed of 3 meter per second. So 3 meter per second is the speed of man. Now think properly, if man is moving in this direction with 3 meter per second, they have indirectly given us the value of dx by dt, correct? Because can I say that the rate at which this length increases is the speed of man, right? So this is the length of the man from the lamp post. So from here the man is at this much distance, right? Now as the man walks, can I say that the distance between the man and the lamp post will change, will increase? So can I say that the rate at which the distance between lamp and man is increasing is the speed of man, right? So whatever speed that they have given us, can I understand that is nothing but dx by dt. So rate of change of x is what they have given. So dx by dt is 3 meter per second. Clear, students? So this is the speed of man, which is the change in x, rate of change in x, and we need to find out rate of change in L. So now what is the idea? We just need to differentiate this expression. So let us simplify this further and establish a simple relation. So 2 1s and 2 3s. So I will be getting 3 is equal to x by L plus 1, correct? I have divided this. Now if I send 1 this side, I will be getting 2 is equal to x by L, correct? So which means I now got the relation between x and L. So what is the relation I have? I have L is equal to x by 2. That's it. I have the relation. The first step of my rate measure process is over. This is my first step, correct? Now what is the second step? Differentiating it, right? So if I differentiate it with respect to time, I would be getting dl by dt is equal to, so if I take 1 by 2 out, 1 by 2 into dx by dt. Correct, students? dl by dt is equal to 1 by 2 into differentiation of x with respect to time. So, that is it. We have the value of dx by dt here. We need to find the value of dl by dt. So, when I substitute 3 here, I get 3 by 2. So, the answer for this will be 3 by 2 meter per second. Clear? So, if you observe closely, there is nothing much we have done here. I have used the concept of similar triangles to find the relation. So, this is the relation. So, finally, I got, by simplifying that, I got this relation between x and L, right. L is equal to length of shadow is equal to height of distance between the lamp post and man by 2. Clear? So, once I got this relation, I just differentiated that relation to find the rate of change. Clear? So, that is the idea. Okay. Let us see one more. So, here they have given that there is a light source which is projecting a very narrow beam, which means it is like a laser. You have seen laser, right? Just a very narrow light beam will come out of it, right. So, let us consider that this is a laser and it is just putting a light beam in this direction, and you can see the spot which is formed on the screen here. This is the screen or wall, whatever. So, it is like this. Okay. Now, what they are saying is, if the light source is rotating at a rate of 1 by 10 pi radians per second. So, now this light source, let us say this is the light source, right. So, now this is the light source, this is rotating in this manner. You can see the direction that it is rotating. So, if it is like this, the spot would be formed here, right, exactly in a straight line. Now, as this starts rotating in this manner, can I say that, for example, let us say it rotated to this angle, then the spot of light will also change. So, spot of light will travel from here to here, correct. So, which means as this light source is rotating, the spot of light moves along the wall vertically upwards. Clear? So, they have given us at what rate this angle is changing, and we need to find out at what rate this spot will be moving. Is that clear, everyone? That is what they are asking. Find the speed of spot of light if the light source is rotating at a rate of 1 by 10 pi radians per second, right. So, that is what we need to do now. So, they have given us this rate of change of theta. They are asking us the rate of change of or the speed of this spot. So, what I will do is, first I need to understand the variables, correct. So, I know that one variable is theta. What is the other variable? I need to make sure that the other variable is related to its velocity, right. So, what I will do is, I will take the other variable as y, clear, y being the distance from the ground to the spot of light. And why did I take that? Think about that first. Why did I take this as one variable? Because can I say the rate at which this variable changes is the speed of spot of light. So, whatever speed that this spot of light travels with will be the rate at which y changes, correct, students. So, that is why I have taken this as my variable. Okay. So, now I have two variables, y and theta. I know the rate of change of theta, I need to find the rate of change of y, right. I think now you can easily understand that. So, first step is establishing a relation between theta and y. What is it? What is the relation between theta and y? So, they have already given us that this length is 10 meters from the light to the screen. So, this is 10 theta y. So, you can see that there is a right angle triangle formed, and I can use tan theta, right. Tan theta is opposite by adjacent. So, that is the relation. So, tan theta is equal to opposite, which is y, divided by 10. Clear, students? So, now once I got the relation, I can differentiate it. Let me first write this, rearrange the terms. I have y is equal to 10 tan theta. Clear? Okay. So, what they have given us is the rate at which theta is changing. with time. Clear? So that's why we have radians per second. So they have given us d theta by dt. So we need to find dy by dt. So I will differentiate this. So let's do that. So when I do that, I get dy by dt is equal to 10 into what is derivative of tan theta? You know how to differentiate it with respect to theta. So first do that. So I will first differentiate tan theta with respect to theta. I get secant square theta. Now what should I do? Now I will differentiate theta with respect to time. Clear? So that is the case. So now just substitute the values which we have. So solving that will give me 10 into, at what theta they are asking us to find? When theta is pi by 3, which means when it is rotating in this manner, as it is rotating, when the angle is pi by 3, that is when they are asking us to find the speed of spot of light. So now substitute the value of secant square theta. What is secant square theta? Secant square pi by 3 radians means 60 degrees, right? So secant square 60. Secant square 60 into d theta by dt. D theta by dt is 1 by 10 pi. 1 by 10 pi radians per second. Okay, so that is the expression which we got. So what is secant 60? Cos 60 is 1 by 2, which means secant 60 is the inverse of that, which is 2. So this is 2. So 2 square will be 4. So 10 and 10 already got cancelled. So we have 4 here. So the final answer will be 4 by pi meters per second. So that should be the answer, students. So that is how we deal with it. Cases like this, right? So first find the relation, and wherever they are asking you speeds, establish a length which is associated with that speed. So change in which length corresponds to that speed. So once you identify that length, rest is just writing a relation between that length and the given parameters, right? So please go through these cases once again, try to solve them once again on your own. So even though you have watched it, so try to write down the question, and without listening to the solution, this time you try it on your own. Clear? So students, the last topic in the differential calculus part, so that is called maxima and minima. Maxima and minima. Okay. So let us consider a function to understand this. Let us take the graph of a function. So let us say this is y, this is x, and a function is like this, right? So now you can say that by looking at this position here corresponds to maximum. So this is the value of x, let us call it as x1. So at this value of x1 I am getting maximum value, clear? And at this value of x2, at this value of x2 I am getting a minimum value. So don't think that the function is still going down. So the value of the function is lesser here compared to this. So what I am talking about here, so whatever maxima and minima I am talking about here are called local maxima and local minima. Local maxima and local minima. So what does local maxima and local minima mean? It means that in the region around that, this is the one corresponding to the maximum value, right? So for example, this value of the function is the maximum in the nearabouts, in the neighborhood of that particular value of x. So it is the maxima in that locality. Do you understand that? So that's why we call it as local maxima. And similarly, this value of y is the minimum in this locality. It might not be the overall minimum. Overall minimum of the function is called as global minima. Clear? We don't need to worry about that now. We don't use that in physics also. You'll learn about all that in your maths classes. For us, it is not required. So we are only concerned about local maxima, local minima. That is all we need. Okay. So this is our local maxima. This is our local minima. Let me call them as A and B. So, A is our local maxima, clear, and B is our local minima. Understood? So, I hope you get why I am calling it as local, right? Because this is the maximum value in that neighborhood and this is the minimum value in that neighborhood. Now, if you observe, if I ask you something like this, for what values of x do we get local maxima and local minima? So, for what values of x do we get local maxima and local minima? How do I identify that? What is one feature which is common for this maxima and this minima? What is something which you can observe common for these both? The common factor is that at A and B, if you draw the tangent to the curve, so if I draw a tangent, the tangent would be horizontal. You observe that? So, nowhere else is the tangent horizontal, correct? So, which means we can identify the local maxima or local minima of a function by finding out where the function is reaching or where the slope of the function is becoming 0, clear? So, here I can say that because the tangent is horizontal, can I say slope is 0? Even here I can say that the slope is 0. Now think, is the slope 0 anywhere else? Is the slope 0 here or here? No. Everywhere here the slope is not 0. The slope is becoming 0 either at minima or at maxima. So, that is the concept which we will be using to identify local maxima and local minima. Very simple concept. So, nothing to worry about. So, for what values of x do we get local maxima and local minima? You can answer this now. The answer would be the values of x for which the slope of the function becomes 0. So, that is the answer. If they are asking you what are the values of x, for what values of x do we get local maxima and local minima? So, where do we get local maxima and local minima? At those values of x for which the slope of the function becomes 0. So, wherever the slope becomes 0, so there we can say that we have either a maxima or a minima. So, that is the idea, students. So, it is very simple to identify maxima and minima, right? Because we know what is slope. What is slope? Slope is nothing but y dash or dy by dx, correct? So, all I will have to do is, if a function is given to you and if they are asking you where is that function reaching a maximum or a minimum value, all you need to do is take this and equate that to 0. So, wherever the slope becomes 0, there we have maxima or minima. And what is slope? Slope is y dash is dy by dx. So, make dy by dx 0, and whatever values of x you get is where you get maxima or minima, clear? Let us take an example to understand that. So, let us consider a very simple case. So, let us say we have y is equal to x square minus 2x plus 4 or plus 2. So, let us take a function like this, clear, x square minus 2x plus 2. Okay. Now, if I ask you where does this function reach the minimum value or maximum value, clear? If I have to identify where the function reaches its minimum or maximum value, the idea is very simple. First, differentiate the function. So, differentiating the function will give us the slope of the function. So, differentiating this will give me the x square derivative is 2x, derivative of minus 2x is minus 2, correct, and this would be 0, done. So, from y I found y dash. So, to find maxima or minima, what should I do? I should take the slope and equate that to 0. That is what I will do. When I equate this to 0, I get x is equal to, what am I getting? X is equal to 1. Correct? 2x minus 2 equal to 0, x is equal to 1. So, this is the value where I get a maxima or a minima. So, for now I do not know whether it is maxima or minima. So, I just know that it is either a maxima or a minima, right. So, till now whatever we have learnt is to understand how to identify where the maximas and minimas are present. So, we will also learn to identify which is maxima and which is minima. We will do that in a while, clear. So, I hope you understood how to calculate or how to locate maximas and minimas. The idea is very simple: differentiate, get the slope, equate to 0. So, wherever slope is 0, there you have either a maximum or a minimum. Okay. So, that is the expression which we get. We will get back to this expression once again. We will see one more example, right. So, let us consider a function given by x cube by 3, right, minus 5x square by 2, right, plus 4x plus 7. Okay. So, that is the expression which we have, x cube by 3 minus 5x square by 2 plus 4x plus 7. So, once again the question is same, identify the maximas and minimas of this function. So, where do we get, for what values of x is this function maximum or minimum? Okay. So, let us do that. So, I will differentiate this function. So, I have y dash is equal to, let me differentiate, what do I get? I will bring 1 by 3 outside, 1 by 3 into derivative of x cube. What is derivative of x cube? I will bring 3 into derivative, I have to decrease the power by 1. So, 3x square, right, minus 5 by 2 into derivative of x square, you know it is 2x plus 4, right students. Now, 3 and 3 gets cancelled, 2 and 2 gets cancelled, and finally I have y dash is equal to x square minus 5x plus 4. Okay, it is difficult to simplify this. So, can we? Yes, we can. We can easily simplify this. I will be getting y dash is equal to, I can write this as x square minus 4x minus x plus 4, right. I have written this 5x minus 5x as minus 4x minus x. I can do that plus 4. So, simplifying this further will give me, if I take x common, I will get x into x minus 4 minus, if I take 1 common, x minus 4. I take minus 1 common here, right. So, this is what we get. So, x minus 4 is common in both the terms. So, this is x minus 4 into x minus 1. So, I have just factorized this particular expression, that is it. You know the factorization, right, you would have learnt it. So, this is what I got the value of y dash as. So, now I will equate this to 0. Now, if I equate this to 0, you know that when the product of two different terms is 0, either this term could be 0 or this term can be 0. So, if I equate this to 0, I get x is equal to 4. When I equate this to 0, I get x is equal to 1. So, that is the idea. So, I know now that at x is equal to 4 and x is equal to 1, I have a maxima or a minima, but I do not know where is maxima and where is minima. Is the maxima here or here? That I do not know, clear. So, we need to find that, right. So, please remember students, to identify the locations of maxima, the idea is very simple. Find the slope, which means the first order derivative, equate to 0, clear. So, that is what we have done in these two cases. This is case 1 and case 2. So, in these two cases, we have just found y dash and equated that to 0. Okay. So, next we will learn how to identify which is maxima and which is minima. So, students, let us see how to identify which is maxima, which is minima. So, I have taken the similar function y is equal to f of x, right. So, we clearly know that in this case this is maxima, the local maxima, and this is minima. So, how to mathematically understand it? Okay. So, if you observe, so if I have a function y is equal to f of x, we know that f dash of x, what does it represent? It represents the slope, the variation of slope. So, f dash of x is also a function, keep that in mind, and that function gives us the variation of slope of f of x, correct? Okay. Now, observe carefully what is happening at maxima. So, if I look at maxima slope is 0. So, y dash is 0 here, even at minima also the slope is 0. So, even here y dash is 0, correct? Okay. Now, but if you observe closely at what is happening at maxima, so look closely. So, this is the tangent. Now, see what happens as I cross the maxima from left to right. So, slope is like this, I mean the tangent is like this, as I approach maxima it becomes 0 and then negative, correct, right. See, I'll do this again, please observe. Initially the slope is a large value, because you can see that my hand is more vertical, more steeper, right. Steeper the tangent, larger is the slope. So, slope is more decreasing, 0, decreasing, right, or you can understand it like this. Let us give some values. So, slope is 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0, minus 1, minus 2, minus 3, minus 4, so on. Do you understand that? So, what I mean to say is, near maxima, the slope of the function is decreasing. So, please observe this carefully, this is a very important point. So, near maxima the slope is continuously decreasing and it is going on to the negative side. So, from minus 1 if it goes to minus 2, it means decreasing only, the value of that is decreasing, clear. The magnitude of slope is increasing, but what is the value? Minus 1 is greater than minus 2, correct. So, 3, 2, 1, 0, minus 1, minus 2, minus 3. So, slope is continuously decreasing near maxima, right. So, please observe that point. Similarly, if you look at minima, now look closely at minima, initially the slope is negative, 0, right. What that means is, let us give some values, minus 3, minus 2, minus 1, 0, 1, 2, 3. So, what is happening to the slope near minima? It is increasing, right. So, let me write that down as well. Near minima, the slope of the function is increasing. Okay. So, that is the observation that we have made. Okay, fine. Now, let us go back to the earlier concept which we discussed. What we discussed was, so if we have a function, so let us consider that I am representing it with some f. So, who decides whether a function is increasing or decreasing? So, we learned this earlier. So, we have seen that for a function to increase or decrease, we look at its derivative, correct, its first order derivative. If the first order derivative is positive, then the function is increasing. When the first order derivative is negative, then the function is decreasing. We learned this already, correct. So, please keep this in mind. We are going to use this now. Now, please look at these results which we talked about. Near maxima, slope is decreasing, near minima, slope is increasing, right. Okay. Now, let us talk about slope. Slope is decreasing one time and increasing one time. So, it is in one case it is increasing, one case it is decreasing. Now, observe the analogy between this and this. Whatever a function is, let us take a function, whatever be that function, for that function to increase, its derivative should be positive, for that to decrease, its derivative should be negative. Now, slope is also a function, right. We understood that earlier, even the slope is also a function. So, for that to increase, can I say the derivative of that should be positive, correct. Now, we already know that slope means f dash of x. Now, what is the derivative of f dash of x? We discussed this, the second order derivative, this is the first order derivative. What is the derivative of first order derivative? Second order derivative. So, please listen carefully. For slope to increase, the derivative of slope should be positive, which means the derivative of this should be positive, which means f double dash of x should be positive, right. And for slope to decrease, this derivative of this should be negative, which means f double dash of x is negative. So, that is it, right. So, we have identified how to we have understood how to identify maxima and minima. So, please see here, near maxima slope is decreasing. When will slope decrease? When f double dash of x is negative. So, I can associate this with f double dash of x is negative, clear. Similarly, near minima slope is increasing. So, when is slope increasing? When its derivative is positive, right. So, which means we can associate this with f double dash of x greater than 0, clear students. So, I'll summarize what we have learnt till now. Please observe carefully. See, this is maxima, minima. At both maxima and minima, first order derivatives are 0, right. First order derivative means slope. Slope is 0 at both. Now, when we talk about second order derivative is negative for maxima, second order derivative is positive for minima. So, remember it in the opposite. For maxima, second order derivative is negative, for minima it is positive. So, that is how you should remember. And why are we getting that? Because at maxima, if you see, slope is decreasing. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0, minus 1, minus 2, minus 3. So, that is how we understood. So, at maxima, the slope is decreasing. So, when is slope decreasing? Slope will decrease if the derivative of slope is negative. What is derivative of slope? Slope already means f dash of x. What is derivative of that? F double dash of x, clear. So, that is the concept, students. So, I'll write down the final result over here. So, please observe this carefully. We will apply this in one or two cases. So, for maxima we can say that f dash of x should be 0, which means slope should be 0. What can we say about f double dash of x? F double dash of x for maxima should be negative, clear. Maximum means take the opposite, negative, right. And for minima, f dash of x should anyways be 0, right, because slope is 0 even at minima. What can we say about f double dash of x? F double dash of x should be greater than 0, right. So, these are the final results which we will have to understand from this concept. So, as long as this is clear, then we can easily understand maxima and minima. So, please look at this once again, go through how we brought f double dash of x or second order derivative into this concept, clear. So, students, let us apply that idea here. So, this is the same question which we have done earlier and derived this results, right. So, these are the values of x for this function where the derivative becomes 0. So, when I equated this to 0, I got these two, correct. Okay. So, now I need to identify which is maxima and which is minima. So, what should we do? We just understood that we need to find the second order derivative to identify maxima and minima. So, I will do that. Y double dash is equal to, so I will differentiate this function once again. So, derivative of x square is 2x, derivative of minus 5x is minus 5 and derivative of 4 is 0, correct. Now, what we should do? We should find the value of y dash at 4 and at 1. So, let us do that. So, what is y double dash at 4 and what is y double dash at 1? So, at 4 what is the value? 2 into 4 minus 5. At 1 what is the value of y double dash? 2 into 1 minus 5. So, let us see what am I getting here? Plus 3. What am I getting here? 2 minus 5 minus 3. So, what does that mean? Wherever y double dash gives you a negative value, that is maxima, and wherever y double dash gives you a positive value, that is minima. So, we can say that x is equal to 1 is where the function will be maximum or local maximum, and x is equal to 4 is where the function will have minima. Clear, students? That is how we identify that. So, first y dash is equal to 0, you will get values of x, then differentiate y dash to find y double dash and substitute the values of x which you got and check whether it is positive or negative. Negative maxima, positive minima. Clear? That is the idea. So, we will apply this in one last question. So, first y dash 1 by 3 into derivative of x cube will be 3x square, right, minus derivative of x square will be 2x and derivative of minus 8x will be minus 8, correct, and this is 0 anyways. So, 3 and 3 is getting cancelled. So, I am getting y dash is equal to x square minus 2x minus 8. So, can you factorize this? We will see. I think I can write this as x square minus 4x plus 2x minus 8, correct. So, if I take x common from here, I will get x into x minus 4 plus here if I take 2 common, I will get 2 into x minus 4. So, x minus 4 is common. So, x plus 2 into x minus 4, correct. So, if I equate this to 0, this is our y dash. So, when I equate this to 0, I will get the two values of x. So, what are the two values of x I am getting? If this is 0, I get minus 2. If this is 0, I get 4. So, I got the two values. So, I know that these are the two values where we get maxima or minima, but I do not know which is which, right, but I know the method now. What is the method? Differentiate y dash again to find y double dash. So, what is the derivative of this expression? Let us see. Derivative of x square is 2x, correct. Derivative of minus 2x is minus 2 into derivative of x, which is 1. So, that is it, 2x minus 2. So, let us check the value of y double dash at these two. So, what is y double dash at minus 2? What is y double dash at 4? So, what is y double dash at minus 2? When I substitute minus 2, I get 2 into minus 2 minus 2. When I substitute 4, I get 2 into 4 minus 2. So, 2 into minus 2 is how much? Minus 4 minus 2 is minus 6. 2 into 4 is 8 minus 2 is 6. So, you can observe clearly that here we have negative, negative corresponds to maxima, and here we have positive, positive corresponds to minima. Clear, students? So that is how we identify maxima and minima. So the steps are pretty simple. So first you find f dash of x equate to 0, you will get the values of x for maxima and minima. So to separate them, to separate which is maxima and which is minima, differentiate that once again. So find second order derivative and check the value of second order derivative for the earlier values which you calculated. Clear? Positive means minima, negative means maxima. So that is it. So we will end here for today, and in next class we will discuss about integral calculus, right.